The Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021 meeting of the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission will come to order. Ms. Janess, will you do the roll call?
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Mary?
Here, from
Oh.
Ann Arbor.
Yes, thank you for telling me where you're at. Please let me know. Commissioner Billups? Okay,
Here and in Ann Arbor.
thank you. Commissioner Shipp?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Chair Jackson?
Present in Pittsfield Township.
Okay, Commissioner Altman?
Present, Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Todoro Hargraves?
Present in Lodi Township.
Thank you. Commissioner Walton?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Carter?
Present in Ann Arbor.
Okay, Councilmember Ramlawi?
Present, Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Song?
Ann Arbor.
Did I miss anyone? Okay, we have a quorum.
Excellent. And before we make a motion to approve the agenda, I would like to amend it, if that is possible, to include a discussion of or a mention of the fact that we will be switching modalities in January. And so we could add that to actually, we can do that in communication, so that's fine. We don't have to amend the agenda. So is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda for our November meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of approving
Aye.
this agenda? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And you all received the minutes from the October meeting. Is there any discussion of those? Any additions, corrections?
I have just one correction. Mr. Summers, the only public forum speaker at the time, his name, Summers, needs to be corrected. It should be S-O-M-E-R-S, not Summers.
Oh, spell that again, please.
S-O-M-E-R-S.
Okay, thank you. I'll make the change.
Thank you.
Any other additions, corrections, comments? Then all in favor of approving the minutes as amended? Is there a motion to do so?
I make the motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of approving the minutes from October as amended? Say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you. The October meeting minutes are approved. So now we've come to the time for public forum. Denise, do we have anybody on the line?
No one is here presently.
Okay. To speak at public comment, you can call in at 877-853-5247 or 888-788-0099. The meeting ID is 935-1520-9819. There's another opportunity to speak at the end of the meeting. Okay, so under old business, we have Dr. Kevin Karpiak with us to talk about the Police Innovations Grant. He is from Eastern Michigan University and the Southeast Michigan Criminal Justice Policy Research Project, whose acronym is SMART. And he is partnering with ICPOC in analyzing traffic stop data from the Ann Arbor Police Department and is partnering with us in the grant from the Community Foundation from Southeast Michigan. And Dr. Karpiak, we started this conversation kind of at our last meeting, but we're gonna continue it today.
Great. just to make sure, I want to make sure what you want me to tell you about. Should I revisit the whole partnership, or should I just go over really what the grant is for?
You could just briefly talk about the partnership. I think maybe everybody has a handle on it, but then mostly talk about what the grant is for, what the grant is doing, and maybe even clarify some of the expectations of AAPD, for example,
Sure.
who is named in the grant as well.
Sure. And so, as you'll remember, as part of ICPOC's work, you all have wanted to pursue an analysis of Ann Arbor police traffic stop data. And you approached SMART, the group of which I'm the director of, to aid in that analysis. And so we've been working on that, setting that up for a while, since I believe April or so. And in the process, I informed Dr. Jackson and some members of ICPOC about a local foundation and fund that SMART has been partnering with locally that I thought might be interested in supporting the project. And that's a newish program out of the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan, which many people might know about because it's a really big and broadly focused kind of philanthropical organization here in Michigan, in Southeast Michigan. Does a lot of great stuff in Ann Arbor, Washtenaw, and Ypsi, and all throughout Southeast Michigan. But they have a new, as of 2021, they have a new kind of initiative, which they call the Community Policing Innovations Initiative. And there's kind of a couple tracks in how they work it. What the initiative is designed to kind of search out and give support to innovative community-led initiatives on having to do with policing and public security. So they're really looking for community-led projects and partnerships with police departments and even municipal governments that are really aiming to innovate and rethink the nature of public safety. They started that program. The first round, I think, got started early, kind of in the late winter of 2021. And as part of that, how they've kind of structured the award is they, rather than they don't give, to my understanding, any money directly to police departments at all. They really want to support the community organization as a community-led initiative. But in order to kind of be responsible to their donors and shareholders, what they like to do, instead of kind of giving a lump sum to communities, is they like to offer a value of a certain amount, and through administrative support, through technical support, and through subject area support is a lot of how they calculate the value of their award. Now, the Community Foundation has been working mainly with a national, very respected national criminal justice kind of consulting organization called 21 CP Solutions that is kind of administering the totality of this program for them. But as that's a national organization without a lot of specifically local ties, what they did early on in the program is they kind of offered put a call out and a solicitation for local kind of subject area experts that could aid in potentially any number of their projects that they might kind of take on as wanting to support. Early on, SMART, my center, got put on their roster of technical and training assistance providers. We've been paired up with a couple of different projects around the area. The first big one being a project out of East Dearborn. But as we were doing that, we were starting the project with the traffic stop analysis. And so I encouraged ICPOC to submit an application to support that process. The Community Foundation did decide to support ICPOC's application and brought in SMART to then be the technical and training assistance provider for that project. Now, what that means is for the structure of that grant, what they really want is to have workable mutual understandings in the partnerships. And so where we are basically in the process now is they're willing to kind of aid in this larger, not just the analysis of the data, but really the larger kind of assessment of what to do with the data once you have it. How can you use traffic stop data to make decisions about police oversight? How can you educate a larger public about the uses and the blind spots of traffic stop data? What kinds of questions should community members be asking about it? What kinds of things should they be concerned about? All those kinds of things are not straightforward and require resources and educational framing and context. And so the Community Foundation, through 21CP Solutions and through SMART, is hoping to provide a set of resources that could aid in this partnership between Ann Arbor PD, ICPOC, and SMART in order to think about how we can best use this opportunity to analyze the specific traffic stop data in order to make it useful for the larger conversation about police oversight and public safety in Ann Arbor. What that means very practically is at some point, hopefully relatively soon, we've yet to set a date, is that we could all kind of the stakeholders in this partnership will get together, and that includes members of ICPOC, that includes members of Ann Arbor PD, it includes members of SMART, and really kind of get around a table and come to a mutual consensus about what we want to accomplish together, both in a kind of a 3 to 5 year horizon, and then in a 1 year horizon or even shorter. So what are our kind of short-term goals? What are our long-term goals? And what are the specific action items that we're going to commit to in order to try to achieve those goals? And that can mean different things for different partners in the partnership. But it then really is a kind of a framework to both kind of hold ourselves and each other accountable and to be transparent about what we're trying to do together. And it's all kind of, none of it is set in stone ahead of time. It's all part of a mutual conversation about what we want to, what our hopes and what our aspirations are in a workable and practical way. And so that's basically where we are right now, is we have this traffic stop data now. We could start doing analysis of it, but we want to do that in partnership with what ICPOC and what Ann Arbor PD and what the community as a large wants to see and how they can make use of it. Right? What SMART doesn't want it, what SMART especially does not want to do is just take the data, go in a corner by ourselves, make a conclusion about it, write a PDF that goes on a website somewhere that no one reads and no one uses. Community, the kind of the fundamental principle of SMART as an organization, and I believe why ICPOC approached us, is that we believe in community engaged research, which means working through solutions together with communities and our partners. And that's how we really envision the process over the next year, at the very least, of this project of working through what the traffic stop data tells us. So I hope I didn't go on too long there. If there's any questions.
Commissioner Othman.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Kapiak, for this introduction to this project and to this grant. When you talked about the involvement of the community, does this mean that we need to seek some kind of input from the community to look at the data, how the data needs to be analyzed to address some of the concerns that the community has? Or
well, I would say that that's yet to be determined, but I would absolutely suggest and support that some element of this process going forward involves a larger, either a public forum or other kinds of ways to engage in a community dialogue about, so we could hear what people want to see and understand and ask about this data. I would be someone wanting to put that on the table, but again, the goals are a mutual conversation. So,
The other thing is, since people are probably they know things about the data, the stop and the traffic and all these things, but they don't have the raw material in front of them, how they can formulate some of the questions or the concerns that they have, so the data would reflect some of these concerns that the community has.
So I guess two parts there. One, again, part of the strategic planning conversation would be when we want to have those conversations. At what point in the process does it make sense? And for example, I take your comment to say that some preliminary analysis of the data might be helpful as a basis for these conversations. So that then we could ask, kind of go some second steps. But there, I can imagine other kinds of processes as well, maybe multiple stages of community involvement in that question. The other element to that question, and again, something that I think we want to think about, especially in the 3 to 5 year window, I would put it, is how can Ann Arbor PD and ICPOC best institute a process or a practice by which traffic stop data is shared in a transparent way that can continually inform conversations about public safety, rather than as a one-off kind of instance like this. I really think that some of the conversation should be about what kinds of practices of data sharing and transparency are map on with best practices nationally and to our own specific communities' goals for how we engage with such issues.
And we had a meeting with Deputy Chief Forsberg and Jeff McDowell, who is a data analyst that was hired by the Ann Arbor Police Department.
Data architect.
Right. And we had an initial meeting, and Deputy Chief Forsberg was able to say some of the things that he hoped to get out of the data. And those had to do with kind of PD specific things. But we thought it was a good idea that they also be involved in conversations about what it might mean to the larger community and how we might be able to use that in the larger community. And so one of the things I talked about was envisioning maybe a series of talks in the community where we talk about maybe the analysis of the data, but also what the data are and what they could possibly mean. And so that's a conversation we had. So we had one meeting, and Dr. Karpiak was suggesting we have another one so that the Ann Arbor Police Department could be included in those conversations about what happens, how we move forward. And so they certainly are free to participate in that process, or if they decide they don't want to participate in that process, that would be a shame. But I think, the goal was to be as inclusive as possible, as we sort of researchers, argue what kind of analysis we're going to use for the data. It's important for us to sort of determine what kinds of questions we're asking and how that might be useful. So for example, the example I used is that I believe it was 2009 when City Council directed the police department to start collecting data on gender. And I think we talked about that in our last meeting, but that was a decision that came from City Council. And so now the police department does that because City Council felt that was important. And so there may be other things that come from this study that City Council, for example, or the community say, hey, it would be good if we also had this, or if we also did that. And so this might have some wider implications. Commissioner Walton.
Thank you. I think Dr. Carpenter actually mentioned it right at the end of speaking there, but I wanted to ask about benchmarking and whether or not, is there value about national, regional, other communities and benchmarking against it? And if there is value in that, if it's comparable enough, do we have access to that data?
So Dr. Jackson is smiling because another component of this whole larger collaboration that I think has been mentioned before here is that, again, as part of SMART's mission to kind of facilitate public conversations around these issues, we've been holding a limited workshop seminar on traffic.
It's a class. It's a class. It has a syllabus.
It has a syllabus, so it's a kind of class. I'm not giving any grades, but it's on analyzing traffic stop data. And some of the issues and challenges of specifically analyzing traffic stop data kind of framed from, again, this perspective of how can public policy be used to informed by it, and specifically civilian oversight. What kind of questions should civilian oversight ask about these? We have gone over some extensive, I would say extensively, the literature on benchmarking. There are several different kinds of benchmarks that have been used traditionally, and some more recent kinds of benchmarks for police traffic stop data. They all have, we have access to some of them. Some of them we cannot do, or we just don't have the resources, or we don't have the availability of some of the data. All of the benchmarks have kind of blind spots and problems with it. There's in fact not really one measure or mechanism or way to assess such data that really is a silver bullet. Really what almost all the literature on analyzing police traffic stop data kind of suggests is that you really have to take multiple measures into account, and they're not always commensurable, but you kind of use several different indicators and try to, some call it the preponderance of evidence approach. Really kind of understand what the across the board the benchmarks and indicators are telling you about the story, as a way to kind of dive deeper and ask further questions about what might be some public concerns or some concerns, but really no one measure or even one indicator or one field or one correlation or one relationship is really going to be the silver bullet. It's really kind of being able to take all of them together and understanding how they fit in a larger kind of narrative.
Is there still value though in our own historical tracking? So once we start to build sort of historical numbers within the community, then we can actually see if trends are changing or moving. Is there value there?
So sure. So having kind of a historical depth of some of these numbers can be useful. Again, part of the trick for benchmarking is always how benchmarks usually work is there's kind of, you have a rate of, for example, stops or a rate of kind of searches in certain demographics, and you have that rate, and then the trick is always, is at an appropriate rate? And to answer that, you have to have what is the base population that you're comparing it to, and that's always the trick, and it changes, and it's kind of negotiable about what the appropriate kind of comparison population that you're comparing those rates to. So for example, in historical trajectory kind of data, that's even multiplied. So that, for example, the demographics of Ann Arbor and the demographics of people commuting in and through Ann Arbor change, right? The comparison benchmark for different kinds of rates of stops and arrests and searches also should be kind of calibrated to those. So the answer is it's useful, but complicated. As that might be a refrain actually for what I say about these things.
Thank you.
I have PTSD from learning about benchmarking and all of the many different ways of benchmarking. And I think we're going to have to use a mixed model where we use some different kinds of analyses to get a full picture. Councilmember Song.
I'm just wondering, given how complicated it was to get the initial data set, if we have like a process in place for how this project will move along, like a request process. Is there a flow chart on who takes the requests on AAPD's end? At what point is Chief Cox involved? I'm just trying to picture out this whole. I understand we have some academics here who are familiar with this, and you've got oversight on your end with, was it the IRB, right? So this isn't like you've got your own checks and balances. I'm just trying to figure out what do we do on our end, on the city's end.
We, fortunately, we now have the data set from the police department, and it took many months to get it. And you guys heard me talking to city council, sort of asking why we didn't have it yet. And that was several months ago. And since then we have gotten several different data sets. But in October, we got the last data set that is the one that we will work with. So we won't require anything else from AAPD. We had originally been given the years 2017, 2018, and 2019. Then we were given 2018, 2019, and 2020 because 2020 was the year that COVID hit us. We know that traffic enforcement was very different in 2020. And so then Dr. Karpiak went back, and then AAPD also gave us 2017. So now we have 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020. Looking at 2020 as an outlier might prove interesting, but in addition to that, we were able to get some additional fields that hadn't been included before. So there was an iterative process of asking back and forth, and we understand that perhaps the police department felt like that was a little bit arduous, but it took a while to get the correct data, and then to get data. There were some questions about, could we have some other information? And there were some things that the police department actually wanted analyzed as well. Deputy Chief Forsberg gave us that information as well. There was something he wanted out of it, or that they wanted out of it, he conveyed to us. And so now we actually have everything we need from them. So thankfully, we don't need assistance in getting the data set out of them now. We have that, and Jeff McDowell was really, really helpful in doing that. And I think we mentioned last time, actually, because of some of the things that were requested, sorry about the braces. Now, other agencies that might ask for information will be able to get a field that they couldn't previously get before because of what he did in working with the Clemens system. So that was kind of a win for everybody in the community.
But we don't need like a specific kind of agreement or an MOU for this project?
We don't. You know why? Because all the data were anonymized all the time. Like, there was no personal data in it. There were no license plate numbers or descriptions of people or anything like that. Well, there's age, and you have age and perceived ethnicity and gender in there, but there was no personal data in there. So it was always should have been accessible the whole time.
Okay, so what else?
So the city attorney's office, once they understood that part, then they gave the green light for that. But there was some time when they did not seem to understand that. But that happened after we had a conversation at council, and it became clear to them. And then we were cleared to do it without a non-disclosure agreement or, some of the other barriers we'd had.
Okay, so there's no need for like a more formal understanding of how this project works.
I think we're pretty clear on it. They gave us the data, and we're going to analyze it, and we'd like them to partner with us in terms of how to talk about it or how to use it. But that's at their decision to make, whether they participate in that or not.
Okay.
On the other hand, it's not at all legally binding or in any way, but part of what the community foundation really wants us to do is to sit down and kind of have that mutual work plan. And part of that, the goal there is so that we at least have shared expectations and a shared agreement about what the overall goals are. And so it's not really a legally binding memorandum of agreement or anything like that, but it is at least sitting down, and so that we're all have a mutual understanding of what we're all doing here, or not.
So does Chief Cox already have that then? AEPD already has that work plan, or?
That's the plan we'd like to make at our next meeting.
Okay. So we're planning to plan.
Yep, we're planning to plan. And that's part of what the foundation does. They come in and they kind of lay that out, and here's what we think you should do. Here are these planning meetings we think you should have. And, they really emphasize having everybody's voice at the table and kind of thinking out, what the next steps are. And so creating that plan together. And so in the initial plan, I mentioned we met with the data analyst and the deputy chief. And so we've asked for one more meeting to kind of plan this out in January, to think about what we might do going forward and what the expectations are going forward.
And that will happen before the next ICPAC meeting then?
We don't know yet. We will see. We have to get it scheduled still.
Well, our meeting's at the end of the month, so.
Yes, we're working on it. It will, if it doesn't happen before our next meeting, it will not be for lack of trying. We
Okay.
are already trying to synchronize our calendars and just kind of waiting for everybody to do that or to decide whether they're going to participate in the process or not.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that, we don't, I hate for something like this that's funded by a major, or that Community Foundation of Southeast Michigan is larger than our own foundation here in Ann Arbor. So it's a reputable organization. And I hate to think that we be delayed as part of a major project because of everything's being handled through inboxes. So if we don't need a more formal agreement, but we haven't gotten to the point where we need a more formal process, then we can talk about that next month, because I'd hate to see time wasted and for a funder to wait for this, especially since we're the first to do this.
We can certainly reach out to you and let you know our progress. I mean, we won't have a meeting in December, but I could certainly check in December so that we're not losing time and just let you know where we are with the project in case there are interim things that council wants to do. So I can take responsibility for doing that for sure.
Thank you and good luck.
So even though we won't be meeting, we're still working all the time anyway in December. So that can be on my to-do list, and I will reach out to you liaisons and just let you know where we are with that scheduling process, because we're trying to schedule for January right now.
Great, thank you.
Of course. Councilmember Rumlawi.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Karpiak, for taking on even more than, you got a lot going on. A lot of extracurricular work, giving back. So thanks for all you do and continue to do. I guess just on the heels of my colleagues' comments, is there a use by date where the services that have been offered by the foundation would expire? Do we have to go ahead.
The funds are imagined as happening for 1 calendar year. I'm not actually sure when that started, because we're still working through some of the pay chain with the foundation. But I would imagine that we'd be going through basically early fall of next year, as when, for example, SMART is paid to be part of this partnership. Some of the implementation funds might be available after that 1-year date, and the overall, again, 3 to 5 year goal can exceed when there's specific funding from the foundation. But I think the foundation conceives these projects as being within basically a calendar year.
And I guess, that it's such an open-ended question, the discussions that have been had here tonight as to what each stakeholder or community will be looking for and what they'll do with this information. I don't want to sound irresponsible, but at times, sometimes we go on fishing expeditions as political officials and search for problems if we so desire, I would say. So helping us narrow it down would be very helpful in understanding what the data is saying, what's it telling, and just when would you think that set of information and recommendations, or at least what the picture looks like, when will that start coming into focus, I guess?
Let me jump in before you do that, just to say that part of our responsibility as ICPOC is certainly to be apolitical in that. And so, we're not elected and we are not political bodies. And so we certainly are not on a fishing expedition. But as a researcher, one of the things that I always do, and certainly Dr. Karpiak does, is we're going to let the data tell us what's there. So this is not like when you pay a consultant to go find something specific in your data. This is not like that. So this is an academic um, assignment, a project that may in time produce a peer-reviewed work, which would preclude that then having a fishing expedition. And so that is a little bit of difference. I know council hires consultants and stuff all the time, and they maybe have some marching orders and they go do that. But in this case, we're just looking at data and we're going to see what they tell us. And we are then going to figure out how to talk about that. And we know there's going to be a lot to talk about because the data will tell us many different things. And we as a community will figure out what that means. And there won't be one thing that it means. So it'll be complex and layered, just as we know, interactions with motorists are. And so it's a little bit different than when you guys hire someone to go, and give them data and have them go do something with it. So this is a much more neutral process, and more of a letting the data talk to us thing. Dr. Karpiak.
So yeah, I mean, I would just echo some of that, and just to circle back, like to me, fishing would mean we're taking thousands of data points and a dozen or even maybe 24 different categories and looking at them and finding one that like looks weird or bad and making kind of political hay out of it. And precisely the point I think of our conversation is, again, to emphasize that no one indicator says anything by itself, right? That there's no one measure, even if it looks really bad and really weird, that is going to be the whole story. And that really, like, what you have to take is several different ways of looking at it, several different kinds of measurements, several different kinds of relationships, and really take that whole picture and really work through what that picture is telling you, so that really the best practice on these, you can't come back with and say, yes, there's disparities or not, or yes, there's racism or not, or something like that. It's not as easy as black and white as that. It really is a much more complicated set of numbers that could raise concerns, or maybe things we want to look into more, or maybe ICPOC will take up as recommendations or policies or other kinds of community conversations. But there's not going to be like, you got a problem in Arbor PD, like, and you have to justify yourself. It really is thinking about like, what are the totality of this data telling us about the work of Arbor PD, if that makes sense.
It does, and thank you for elaborating, Madam Chair and Dr. Karpiak. I won't. Another question I had, but I don't want to take too much of everyone's time. I'll let others speak. Thanks.
And Ali, we're happy always to have conversations with you about it. So shoot me a text and we can chat about it, and we can do a three-way if we need to or whatever. But we're happy to keep talking about it. We could get all down in the weeds talking about this stuff. I know we should move on, but we definitely are happy to talk details. And Dr. Karpiak might want to hang out with us just a little bit longer, because the next thing on our agenda is looking at the Philadelphia traffic stop bills that were passed. And I sent these to you guys. I hope you got a chance to peruse them. One of them was 2 pages long. The other was 4 pages long. I'm sorry, Commissioner Teodoro Hargraves.
This is a good segue, because one of the things that I noticed about these, I think it was the Philadelphia one that was only 2 pages long. This is in regard to require the maintenance and reporting of certain information related to vehicle stops. So it seems to me like this is our next step after what you're working on now. And so I want to make sure, because as I've been listening to this for the last few minutes, that's what I've been imagining in my head. I'm listening to what you're telling me, knowing what this document says, and thinking that this is ultimately our intent. This is what we're going to get to.
So the bill to which Commissioner Teodoro Hargraves is referring is 210635, and it is essentially a bill that City Council passed in Philadelphia that makes all traffic stop data public. And that information, and so there's really just kind of one long paragraph, and I know you guys have it, so I'm not going to read it to you, but it talks about making sure that the police department collects data, that it's recorded, and that there's an electronic database that has a capability to record information from all traffic stops. And it talks about what kind of information they want in every file, like police area, date, time, year, make, and model, driver's ethnicity, gender, passengers, things like that. So there's detail about what they want, but it in effect makes that public. And their argument is one that I have made here, which is that traffic stop data actually belongs to the people, in that it is the data of everyone who has gotten stopped in a municipality and should not be owned by a police department, for example. And so it gives obviously some time for that to be established and for that to take place, but that is the gist of the shorter of the two bills, that information become public.
And just to be clear, this specific partnership is really conceived as a one-time arrangement, but absolutely one of the things coming out of the conversation and the recommendations that we will be having is that we need to develop a kind of a consistent process by which data is reported, and the Philadelphia can be one of the models for how to do that, for sure.
Right, and so I'm not trying to drag Dr. Karpiak into more work with us, but I have been in some talks. Dr. Karpiak has incidentally been in some talks. We've been in some talks. I think the last one was at Yale, about what police data can do, how it can be used, and how there are so many academic units, particularly right here in this particular area of Washtenaw County, that could do useful things with that data, and how they're beginning to do that. And so at I think it is called the Major Cities Chiefs Conference. It's the top largest 17 cities in the United States. Those police chiefs get together and have a conference every year. And so there is a researcher who is going to talk about that very topic. She was invited because they were like, hey, what could we do with this? Because usually police departments use data in ways kind of similar to what we've talked about with Ann Arbor. Well, we want to use it for this purpose or that purpose, sort of internal things, but not thinking about what it does in the broader sense. And so she was like, well, hey, we could know this, we could know that, we could know this, if you let, for example, an academic unit, look at these data sets. And they were like, oh, wow, that's interesting. Come tell us more. So she's going to go present there. And making that data public is sort of the first step in that. There are other municipalities who have done that. It was just easy to find this one because it was fairly recent. And so I wanted to put that forward. And then talk about the second piece, and then talk about what we might do with it. So the other bill that the city of Philadelphia passed is one where they have decided, it's called Achieving Driving Equity, and they cited disparities in traffic tickets for low-level civil infractions. They also cited lots of national examples of that. And then they have a list of infractions that they are no longer going to have police pull over motorists for. It was challenged in court, and the state found that, it does not violate their state motor vehicle code for the city of Philadelphia to have this change in enforcement. It does not change their state law, nor, we did a little bit of research, would it change Michigan state law should Ann Arbor decide to do that. There are a couple of models of how you might do that, but some of the things include not pulling people over for failing to signal, not pulling people over. Most modern cars have a brake light in addition to the two in the back. They have one at the level of the trunk. And if that is out, even if the other two are working, you can be pulled over for that. They have suggested that is not a safety issue, and you should not be pulled over for that. For example, having the light out above your license plate. There are several examples. I'm not going to read you guys the bill. You can look at it there, and you can see the kinds of things that they listed there. And I have been in the Motor Vehicle Code of Michigan and sort of looked up the corresponding kinds of violations there. But one of the suggestions is that we develop a subcommittee and look into what we might do with this in preparation for making a resolution and a recommendation to council about how they might approach this. You guys know these are civil infractions. It is, most of these are not considered safety issues. Councilmember San, sorry, I just saw your hand.
I was just thinking how Ann Arbor is the home of ARPANET. So for the nerds, that's the networking protocol, right? That's starting the internet, and that's how research institutions were able to communicate with each other. That's all open source. So if we're looking at open traffic data being available here in the city, that really speaks to our history of making data available. Very long history of open source. There's a strong open source movement and supporters in this nerdy community. And that really aligns with also our history of social justice work, right? So I don't know if folks, maybe Mohammed can speak to this, and ARPANET, that was a Department of Defense project too, but it'd be really interesting if we can tie those histories together. So it wouldn't be too unusual for something like this to come out of Ann Arbor, I don't think.
And it does dovetail sort of with the with what the Washtenaw County prosecutor is doing in saying that they are no longer going to use these kinds of stops as ways to gather evidence against people. And so there certainly is a longer history of open data, and that is a thing that is happening all across the country in all kinds of institutions beginning to share data, not just from municipalities, but even within across institutions, and but also thinking about how I think there is nothing, so, and how we might look at the consequences of these kinds of things. You guys know that there are warrant expungement days and all kinds of events where people have one ticket and the fines build up and the fines build up, and then they lose their driver's license and they get pulled over because they have to drive for not having a license or a suspended license, and there are more fees. And and so we look at the consequences of these things, and eventually somebody owes thousands of dollars. We were talking with someone who had $7,000 in fees that they absolutely could not pay, and how my person negotiated with the city, who was kind enough on the last warrant resolution day, I think by the Interfaith Coalition for Peace and Justice, and the city agreed to waive the late fees, which reduced the cost of the fine, and a donor came forward and donated several $1,000s to clear that person's fines. And it is wonderful to see people in the community coming out to work on those kinds of issues and to be generous in that way to help people get back on their feet. But I think prevention would be even better than those kinds of things, but certainly in line with, thinking about how we handle civil infractions. So discussion, thoughts, questions, comments?
I think it's a real great idea and something for us to really look into. I recently watched on, I don't know if you guys saw it this weekend, a report on 60 Minutes, which had a report from the Center for Policing Equity, and interesting work that's being done in Las Vegas and in Berkeley, California, and some other places that sort of piggybacks on some of this work that I think that will be things that we'll be looking in the future toward, at least finding out how other communities have, how these changes have impacted other communities. And some of them, of course, are changing of some of these very minor reasons why people are getting stopped, but also even go further with, sort of the whole reimagining some of the interactions that police officers have, or supports for police departments to work with citizens in a different way. So I think this is a good, sort of step for us to move forward and start looking into it further and see what we can come up and see if we can get support from city council and community and police officers to to do these kind of changes.
Commissioner Mary.
You know, we have talked about this before about collecting data and the challenges about collecting data with, especially about race and ethnicity, is that it's with the police, they ask people, they can't ask people, they cannot, or do we depend on their guess? And people get suspicious, why are you asking me my ethnicity or my race? And cameras have their problem identifying people, and race, and also asking people is a problem. So it would be interesting to wait a little bit after the Philadelphia start implementing this resolution they passed. How do they handle this? Like when they ask people about their race, how are they going to collect that data? When I was reading it and I was thinking about the challenges we were talking about here, about collecting certain data, to know how they are going to collect it, what challenges they had faced. As you're doing this research, I think a piece of it will be this, either Philadelphia or some other cities that might have dealt with issues that we are challenged to learn how the police would handle them.
You know what, I got a chance, especially after our conversation last month, which was very lively, and emailed a city council person in Philadelphia. And what they're doing is they are using what Dr. Karpiak talked about last time, which is the officer's perception. So they're not actually asking people. They're doing what Ann Arbor does already, which is just saying that person looks African-American to me. And that perhaps the police officer's perception, as long as that's accurate, is as important as what the ethnicity is of the person. Now, we know that there are people in Ann Arbor who have gotten tickets where the box was checked unknown when they feel like they look very African-American and that their ethnicity is not unknown. And so, one of the things we can look at is we could ask the police for a sample, for example, that's not very exhaustive, but we could ask them to take a random sample of tickets and look at those driver's licenses and see if the descriptions that the officers have used actually matches up with what you see on the driver's license. Now, we don't have access as ICPOC to driver's license data, but the police department certainly does. And they could do an examination of their own practices and do an audit in that way to see how accurate they are, which is a whole nother question. But for our purposes here, Philadelphia is just relying on, officer perception, just as Ann Arbor does. So they're not doing that difficult thing of asking people and possibly offending people and stuff like that. So they're just going on their observations. Same thing with gender too. So I know that we talked about maybe some of the perils in that. Councilmember Romlawi.
Thank you. Speaking to this change in Philadelphia and incorporating perhaps somewhere down the line locally here, how would this be enforced by other law enforcement agencies, the state police and the county? Now we may.
My presumption is that you guys only have jurisdiction over Ann Arbor Police Department, and so it would not impact what the sheriffs do unless the sheriffs decided to do something like that. And Michigan State Police working in and through or on the highways of Ann Arbor would not be impacted by that. So I am not overreaching.
So from my understanding, and I know Chief Cox is with us here tonight, that the city could pass something like this, and other law enforcement agencies could choose to ignore it and enforce their own interpretation of these traffic infractions. Chief Cox, if you could help me better understand, would these laws be ignored by other law enforcement agencies?
Arian Slay would probably be better suited to talk about legally, but I would imagine if they're enforcing a state law, other agencies would just enforce state laws around whatever they're pulling the person over, and not city ordinance, created by Ann Arbor. So yes, they could absolutely ignore anything that there's a duplication in state law.
Commissioner Tadoro Hargraves. You're muted still.
Sorry. How often do we actually have Sheriff's Department officers traveling through Ann Arbor and doing traffic enforcement? I don't know if they keep any records of that. If they do it, I mean, I see them outside of Ann Arbor, but I don't, when usually you see a sheriff's officer, it's because he's going to court or something in Ann Arbor. I don't see them have people pulled over or anything.
Well, I can tell you that it does occur from time to time, because they certainly do the University of Michigan games with us, and they have co-jurisdiction. So, but I couldn't tell you how often it is. For the most part, I would imagine they have more than their hands full for the other parts of the county, that they don't need to come over here and fish for additional work. But I'm sure it happens from time to time if something happens right in front of them.
Okay. And I guess this is something we'd have to ask Assistant City Attorney Slay, because on page 2 of this ordinance, it does say, to the full extent of council's legislative authority, a police officer or other law enforcement officer. So I'm guessing, and we could confirm this with Philadelphia, that may actually include Philadelphia Sheriff's Department, SEPTA police, other police that they have that are active in the city of Philadelphia.
Make it a note. Professor Karpiak.
I just wanted to jump in on the question of the sheriff's office as well. I'm again, multiple things. I'm on the sheriff's 21st Century Policing Compliance Commission. I'm on the Policy and Oversight subcommittee of that. And as part of that, we actually are also looking at some of the data for traffic stops for the sheriff's office. Although that has a different agreement with it. It does have a non-disclosure agreement, so I can't talk too much about it. But I don't think I'm talking out of school to say that legally the sheriff's office I believe can do stops in Ann Arbor and does do stops in Ann Arbor, but the vast majority of their resources are spent on the municipalities around that do not have their own police departments. Ypsilanti Township being the major one.
Thank you. So is there anybody who wants to volunteer to serve on such a subcommittee to explore how this might work in Ann Arbor? Commissioner Carter, for example, would you like to serve on that? Thank you very much. You were going to be voluntold if you did not volunteer. Councilmember Song, you're in as well. Anybody else interested in serving on such a subcommittee? Promise to make it as efficient as possible and not work you to death, but
I'll be interested.
thank you so much. Okay, and if anyone changes their mind and decides to add themselves to the group, once you've committed, you cannot leave the group. But if you would like to add yourself to the group at a later time, just shoot me an email. And so new business, we wanted to talk about community activities that we might pursue in the first quarter of 2022, sort of brainstorm about what some of those things might be. And it's a good time to point out that the state legislature has said that because ICPOC is subject to the Open Meetings Act, that we will begin meeting in person in January. As an aside, this means that we will be going back to City Hall, and we will need to show proof of vaccination to do that. Right now, our administrator, Ms. Janess, has done some research, and it looks as if a commissioner were ill, for example, and needed to miss the meeting, they would not be able to Zoom into the meeting at this time. We understand that there may be some hybrid testing going on in the future where the public might be able to Zoom, but it looks like at this point, commissioners all need to be in person to attend the meetings. Now, we all know that's subject to change because right now we have more COVID cases this week than we have had at any point since 2020. So who knows what will happen in January. But having said that, we should brainstorm about some activities that we might want to participate in the first quarter of 2020. You know, it seems like a good time to think about what we might do in the new year because this is our last meeting of the year. Commissioner Shipp and I have been talking about a youth summit, for example, putting on a youth summit to allow young people in the community to talk about policing and what that means to them and what they would like the future of public safety to look like, for example. That's something that we could invest in the first quarter, but certainly we should throw out lots of ideas and pursue those. It will just temporarily pretend that COVID won't be a factor if we're able to ignore that temporarily, and then you know, try to plan around it if it is indeed a factor. Any other activities in which people were thinking we should engage?
You know, we have talked a lot about community outreach as a core, as a very important, you know, component of the work we do. And, you know, the fact that we couldn't meet with people made community outreach is very challenging. But maybe we can start that in a way that, you know, maybe we choose places like churches or a community organization that require people to be vaccinated or temperature taken when they come in. I don't know what the procedure, because, you know, in the United States, we're very relaxed about what to expect from people. That doesn't expose anybody to, you know, being not safe. See if there's a possibility to hold meetings with the community during that, you know, as, because really we weren't able to do much. We started meeting publicly and then the COVID came and we did little bit. I mean, maybe the most significant was the buses. I don't know how much we gained out of that, you know, putting information in buses. Or I know, you know, some of our members went and spoke to some organization in their meeting over Zoom. But that's very different than meeting with the community. It's very, very different. So maybe we can inquire during the month of December or January, is that possible to be resumed?
I think one of the, sorry.
Commissioner Carter had her hand up, and then Commissioner Offman.
I have thought for a long time, and I don't quite know how to do this because of their schedules. I'd like to have a meet and greet with the police.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important. I don't know what kinds of ideas, and maybe to start with the union. I don't know, but I think it's important that we try to develop some kind of rapport with the police department. They know who we are, so they know what we're trying to do. And so I'm just throwing that out there because I have no idea how it could be done.
Commissioner Tadoro Hargraves, do you want to speak to that?
The chief had his hand up too.
Yeah, I know we have been going back and forth about the meetings with the unions. Also, one of the things that I was going to throw out there, and I can send all of you information, like the State Street District, we have once a month we have gatherings, and they are in person, but police do come to those. And so it would be an opportunity if you would like to join us, and you can see how the officers interact with the businesses and our partners downtown, but then also you get an opportunity to interact with them too. So that's one place that might be a thought, but I do think that Bonnie and I, Commissioner Billups and I would very much like to continue the meetings with the union reps also. Chief?
Yeah, and I think that I don't know if I would want us to come to another meeting with another group. I think that as a commission, I would like to have some kind of interaction. I know you all have heard me say this before. The Bible says, how can two walk together unless they agree? I think we have to back way up and find some point of agreement if we're ever going to try and work together, which we really, I mean, they're part of the community as well.
I very much support you. I support this idea. We really need to have a good rapport with our police to the extent that, you know, we can work together. In the end, we don't need to be seen as, you know, we are opposite in a way because we're oversight by definition, but also doesn't mean that we cannot have, you know, a decent relationship or some kind of understanding, at least some areas. And I agree with Commissioner Carter 100%.
I think Francis and I were trying to set something up, so maybe the chief will speak to that. Chief Cox.
No, I thank you. I appreciate it. You know, that engagement is what we try to do every day with the public, in the sense that, you know, you can't build trust unless you have conversations with folks. And so, no, we welcome it. You know, I was going to invite you beside, you know, what Francis had mentioned about certainly community meetings around whether it's State Street or some other places, but we also do Coffee with a Cop. We do a lot of stuff with the public in general, and you all are the public also, and you're welcome to come and observe us having contact with the folks and engage, because you belong too. So, I mean, it's not a secret. We don't try to hide it, you know, and we will absolutely engage you. We've had a couple of events. I know Councilmember Song came to one where we have a chaplain program now, and they put on an event, a Faith in Blue event at a park. And we didn't have a lot of people come, but the fact is people did come, and we had an opportunity. As a matter of fact, that was the first time I met Councilperson Song in person, which was amazing to be here over 2 years and actually meet somebody for the first time. So, you know, we welcome it. You're invited to any place we go, and we will absolutely, you know, appreciate you being there. Every time that I know one of the officers have actually met or engaged you all individually, they've always walked away saying, wow, that was different than I thought. They're different than I thought, what have you. Every single one of them. And I think that's really important.
I'd like to know when these opportunities present themselves.
Chief, if you would send Denise and let us know. We found out about the Faith in Blue event about an hour before it started, and I could not get there in time, and I couldn't notify anybody else. But if you would let Denise know about the Coffee with a Cop, that'd be great. But I think Stephanie has a point too. It'd be great to have some small group meetings, you know, 3 or 4 commissioners or whatever, because that's a thing, as Commissioners Carter and Amiri have talked about, is very important to them. Commissioner Shadoro, Hargraves, and Commissioner Billups have been having those meetings specifically with union leaders, and they hope to continue that as well. But you know, it doesn't have to necessarily be union centered, and so an opportunity to do that would be really helpful. I think low key, kind of non-threatening, kind of, you know, we promise. I know one of those comments that the chief made was directed at me. I met someone and introduced myself as Lisa, and later they were like, oh my God, that's the Dr. Jackson. So, you know, we're not as terrifying in person as we seem on Zoom, I think. And so it is, you know, a goal certainly to have those kinds of interactions. So whenever we can do that, it's greatly appreciated. And Commissioner Carter, we might have you we can text after and maybe we can follow up on that and kind of make sure that happens. Specifically, even if you do get to go to District Connect or Coffee with a Cop, I know you were interested in something more one-on-one where you can just sort of talk and chat with folks. But that's a good goal to do in early 2022, because we know that most police officers have been vaccinated, and so it's winter time. We're gonna have to do something indoors, and so you could do something like that safely, especially if you have a big room and a small number of people. And that seems like something we could certainly achieve in the first 3 months of the year, and we could perhaps start our outreach again. I think when we think about that with larger groups, we're going to be dependent upon what the virus does, but we can certainly do our best to do that. I've still been doing that on Zoom, which is not nearly the same. Any other sort of brainstorming around that?
Well, I want to echo what Commissioner Carter had mentioned, is we could be having different layers of interacting with the police, whether to go to the coffee time with the community or whatever, or to be more intimate, to have just members of our commission and the police department. So it's more of trying to really make sure that we know each other, understand each other, and also part of our goals from our retreat to open up channels of communications with the police. And I think food is a thing that even warriors, they have a peace when the time comes to have a meal or so, and we could have, whether coffee or snacks or lunch or whatever, and have that conversation going. It's at the end of the day, the police department is serving the community in the way they do, and also we are serving the community in the way we are trying to help out and bridge things and improve relationships and make it a bit more positive. And I think it's important for many of us who did not have a chance to meet with the police to see them. I met with so many of them, and I know them. I know their, lots about them and families. They're human beings. They're like us. It's just the only thing is they have uniform when they are on duty. So they're people like us. So I think it's important to extend open communications with them, because at the end of the day, it's our job altogether, collectively, to make sure that the community is safe and the needs of the community are addressed.
I think that's important, and you are right. That was definitely a goal that came out of our strategic planning. One of the things I want to mention on the heels of that is that everyone is aware that we'll be bringing on some new commissioners soon. We hope that they will be able to do many parts of the onboarding process, some of which kind of need to be done in person. And so we're looking forward to that happening. I know everybody here has, except Dr. Karpiak, has gotten an email from me about that. I don't think we have any reports from committees, but Commissioner Amiri, this is going to change a little bit what I emailed you all today, but Commissioner Amiri is going to be going out of the country for an extended period of time, and thus is going to leave our commission. I'm very happy for her that she is able to get away, but very, very sad to lose her and all of her talents and all of her knowledge, and probably most of all her perspective. And so we hope that we can still call on you when you get back and text you in Europe and ask you questions and get your feedback, even though you'll be in the sunny, warm weather and we'll be struggling in the snow. So I wanted to say that here because we won't have a meeting in December, and so everybody could say goodbye. And if you in the public are not familiar with her work, of course, you can just look at her Wikipedia page, which says something that she has one. So.
Well, I'm really sorry that I have to do this, but I know, like, being overseas with the time difference, even if the Zoom meeting continue, I know they won't continue. Even if they continue, it'll be like 3 o'clock in the morning or midnight or something like that. So it's not going to be possible for me to participate. And if I am out 3 or 4 months in the beginning of the year, you know, first of all, I think I'll violate the bylaws of the commissioner, how many meetings they have to attend. And the other thing, I don't think it's fair for the commission to have somebody in name only. That's not the way I like to operate. And being so far and for so long, I cannot do anything. So rather than just be there in name until somebody say, hey, Anan, you overstated your absence, you can't do that, and we would like to ask you to leave. I think I should do that myself and give an opportunity, especially that I know that there were so many applicants for position for and probably we picked up the best 3, but like maybe there's more in the group, within the group who applied, somebody you wish you could add, but there's not enough room to add new people. So just not like that I have anything. Actually, I'm very honored to have served on this commission. I love the people I work with. Every one of you, I mean, have something to offer. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we haven't got to know each other in the way I would have liked to know you. And but this is how I feel is for me, the right thing to do is to tell you that I'm not going to be here for extended period of time, minimum 3 months. And for that reason, I would like to, resign by the end of the year and allow people who are interested in serving and have the time. Because like in a year, like I was already gone a month of September and I didn't attend the meeting. And I'm going to be gone at least 3 months or 4. So that's what really make me want to step down and make room for somebody else to serve. And I thank every one of you. And I mean, it gave me an opportunity to know you. I would never have known you otherwise, probably. So thank you for what you do. And I think this is a great commission. And I'm honored that I've served on it. That's all I can say.
We should also say happy birthday.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
We are.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
We are honored to have you serve with us on this commission with your wisdom and your experience and your insight. This is something that we cherish, something that we keep with us, and hopefully the people who are coming after us would build on what we had done and move forward. And it's just an honor. I know, knowing you in person, I probably saw you through the meetings more than other times. So that to me is very special. And it's just, and we are neighbors too. And
we are neighbors, yes.
Yeah, and this is the time when we see each other.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah.
If I could be of any help without being on the commission, you can always call on me. You can always call me and say,
we will.
With this. And I want you to know that, and I'm genuine about this. I'm genuine when I say this, And when I get back, I will get in touch with you and see if, I'd love to meet with the police as a citizen of the city, not necessarily because I'm on the commission. It's good to know our police. It's good to know our officials. So, yeah, you can always count on me. If you want help in outreach or if you want help in that, deal with me as a member of the community. That could be help for you, or for the commission, not your person.
Great.
Councilmember Rumlawa, you can just jump in there.
Thank you and happy birthday, Anand.
Thank you.
Just wanted to say thank you from my position, the time that you've taken, the experience you brought, and the candor and the perspective that you have was valuable and greatly appreciated. It's sad, but at the same time, we're happy for you, and we appreciate everything you've given this commission, and hopefully you can continue to give to our community. As they say, it takes a village, and from folks with many different backgrounds. So you'll be missed, and I just wanted to say thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Can I say, am I? No, I'm not muted. When I first came on the commission last year, Anand called me and welcomed me and invited me to come and sit on her porch and chat. And I guess because of COVID, we never did that. But I really appreciate you, Anand, and I thank you very much. I'm sorry I never got a chance to come sit on your porch, but maybe when you get back.
I promise you next summer I will get in touch with you. I will sit on my porch.
Okay. All right, good. Thank you. Best of luck. God bless.
Folks are aware that Don is the first director of the Arab American National Museum. Your word, yes. Where I grew up, it's where I have to take my children. My perfect. We like it more than Greenville Village and Henry Ford Museum, especially with a comic book store down the street and good food across the street. But your leadership has crossed, Dearborn and here in Ann Arbor. So I appreciate the work that you've done before. And I've only known you a year here and here, but as well as I just wanted to thank you for coming to council and giving public comments and writing that letter earlier in the year. It takes effort to come to our meetings, as you know, but to be a commissioner and come and give public comments, that's going above and beyond. So I appreciate it and good luck, and I hope you enjoy your time.
Thank you.
I think that Councilmember Song reminds me, I think I was the one at a meeting last year that read Anand's letter. And I remember reading it and thinking to myself, this is a strong woman. This is a strong woman with a strong voice. And she was very intent on having it heard. So it was my pleasure to read that for you, Anand. And it's been a great opportunity for me as a learning experience to work with you. So I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you.
I remember that was February, maybe the 1st of March in 2020, just before lockdown. That was in person.
I was in Spain. I sent it from there.
Yes, you did. And you were quite clear that it must be read. And
Right.
Francis and I waited until the end of the city council meeting, the end, and read that. And she read that letter.
Yeah, that was a great letter. Anand, we're gonna miss you, your kindness, your intelligence, your spirit. But we'll be with you wherever you go, and you'll be
together.
well.
I mean, I'm coming back.
That's right.
Back. We'll work
That's
together.
a short break.
You know, I'm not like giving up on my community work.
Fantastic.
And then I can only echo what everyone else is saying. It's been a real pleasure and honor to get to know you through this.
Thank you.
So I hope when you get back, we can discuss Spain and everything else too.
Mhm.
Yes, we can.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, having said that, I think that's probably one of the more important things that we could accomplish tonight, saying goodbye to Anand and thank you for everything you've done, all of the things that you've done for us, including sharing your wisdom and perspective with us. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I think just prior to that, I would like to report a little bit from our the crew subcommittee meeting.
Oh, okay.
There is something very interesting came out And you are familiar with the MPRI, the Michigan Prisoners Reentry Initiative. And one of the issues of the released individuals is housing. And what is going to happen is there is a pilot project that McKinley is going to start. They're going to have 10 spots for housing for individuals who are re-entering the society. And that is going to be very interesting because housing is one of the most difficult things for re-entry, to have housing available to individuals because they can really build their lives. And individuals who have been incarcerated, sometimes it's difficult for them to establish some kind of credit or background check and all these things, and they might not find the housing. So McKinley is going to start this project of having 10 spots for individuals. Like they will probably have 10 apartments or so over time, in with coordination of the, I think, Sheriff Department office, as well as I think the Prosecutor's office. So this is something that I just want to mention, that this is going to be out there, and McKinley should be recognized for taking this initiative and helping out with some of the released individuals to come back to normal life and having a roof over their heads. That is my 2 cents for this evening.
That's good news.
Yeah.
And before we go, I probably should update you all at the next city council meeting. We have a report from our city administrator on recommendations for unarmed crisis response. And if you, there's a coalition of folks throughout the county, including some really amazing public health professors and researchers, Bill Lopez, Paul Fleming, who are part of a group called Coalition for Re-envisioning Our Safety. And they've been advocating for, they have specific requests on what this proposal might look like. And it's probably worth keeping an eye out as this group has read the crew report. I feel like this is kind of an interesting countywide effort to try to organize behind what planning this might look like. It won't be a vote on implementing the program. There won't be a vote. I'm sorry if I said there was a vote. It's a report out on a potential for what the program can potentially look like.
And to sort of tack onto that, the city administrator should be coming forward with the plan that they developed in response to the resolution from council that you all passed in April. And I guess we're expecting the due date for that was in December, so we don't know if it'll come forward on the 6th or the 20th if you guys have to meet on the 20th.
We're expecting it on the 6th.
It will be interesting to see what that plan is as well. And at some point, ICPOC will get to review those and take a look and, take a position one way or another, because we are specifically mentioned in the resolution for the development of the unarmed response plan. Many of the conversations that we had here were a part of council's decision to ask for the city administrator to develop such a plan. So that involves all of us, and we look forward to seeing the plan from the city administrator and other plans and how, and I know there'll be lots of time for public comment and discussion of the plans and how they might work and how they might be funded. And so we're looking forward to that, and I'm sure we'll be talking about that at our next meeting for sure, but perhaps even in the interim. So thank you for bringing that up.
And because we know how social services is essential to a lot of the justice work, we'll also have a resolution we're voting on And that also a parallel county resolution. So our meeting's on the 6th, the county meeting's on the 7th to extend social service agency funding for another 6 months as they come up with a new grant profit, as the county comes up with a new granting process that they've promised in the past 2 years. So we won't be leaving anyone in the lurch over the holidays.
That's really good to hear. Anything else that anybody needs to communicate out? I don't want to prematurely adjourn us.
Happy holidays, everybody. Have a safe holidays and enjoy your families, friends, and be safe.
Sorry, do we need to see if there's public comment?
We do need to check and see if there's public comment before we adjourn. That is a very important thing that we need to do.
So,
Denise, can you?
I don't have anyone here for public comment.
Okay. I know Denise would have stopped me, but it is important.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Walton, for keeping me on task there. Anyone who has signed up to be on the subcommittee, we will be in touch certainly before January in the next couple of weeks about how to get started and what we should do in exploring, these two bills from Philadelphia, maybe making a recommendation for a resolution from our own city council regarding that. There may be other commissions that would like to partner with us as well. And so I'm sure they'll be reaching out and we'll be communicating as well. So we might have something cross commission based as we do with maybe looking at facial recognition kind of thing. So anything else before we go? All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn our November meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Would like to continue this? No, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you all
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Take